Hi. Uh, okay, today we are going to actually finish the last session in terms of the multi-screen and the social TV. So basically, it's an interesting convergent phenomenon. I think I will share 3 different research that I have done before with you. And also, I have marked your proposal. I did receive 2 groups. Basically, the groups are from Lucas, Melissa, and also Runa and Esther. Both of the groups have done some revisions, so you will be even happier about your marks because you have some improvement. All right. So if you have any question, we can further discuss. Because the next 6 weeks, we will have the co-instructors. The first one will be Dr. Natalie Pan, and she will bring some students from the NUS. So basically, all the readings have been uploaded to the e-platform, the e-Moodle. So you can get, I think each week I saw 2 readings that she has uploaded. So you can do some readings before her session starts. All right, so here you can see all the topics here. And Fernando Paragas will follow the the following next 3 weeks. And I think he assigned 1 reading per week for us. So I think they will bring lots of insights, including like new media phenomena in Singapore and the Philippines, and also some issues they feel more concerned to share with us. So during the 6 weeks, I will still be in class. And I hope that, because I think after that, it's nearly the end of the semester, then a few weeks later, you will have to present your final paper, right? So during that 6 weeks, I will suggest you contact me if you have any encountering some confusions, or some recruitment of your data has problems, or anything you would like to talk to me, or the framework of your data analysis. Please just contact me. You can email me, message me, and we can arrange the time to discuss. Okay? All right. So you have any questions so far? Or if not, we are going to continue. Okay. So remember last time we talking about multi-screen, right? And we have a multi-screen social TV system has been introduced. And now I would like to also share another study with you. It's a quantitative survey research. So basically, it will be very interesting to looking at why people, they like to use the multi-screen video. I saw lots of the market reports globally, including Google. They said, oh, that's increasing trend of the multi-video consumption, and lots of people spend lots of time, on different platforms to watch videos, and so on and so forth. But how to actually turn such market reports, trend reports, into academic paper? Yeah, that's something. Usually when I am interested in the emerging technologies, that's the things I have to do, and I cannot wait until people develop the papers and they tell me what to do. Okay, so that's something you can think about if you are very interested in embracing the new technologies and always want to be the first. Because first mover has advantages that none of other papers has been developed. Like I started, the first few papers about mobile TV, mobile broadcasting TV. So professor from US, when they visited Wiki School in Singapore, they just told me, oh, so you are the link. So they signed lots of my papers. So basically that's something, if that fit your personal research interest, and then you are also capable to do such line of research, I will strongly encourage you to do so. So basically my tips will be, okay, first you realizing that's a prevalent, phenomenon of something, a new media that you are interested to do. Then you will looking at the market reports and trends that will identify something that you feel interested in, like multitasking. Perhaps they also use the term, but they will not tell you what is. They don't use scholarly definition or the measurements to measure so-called multitasking, right? And you also can think about, if I want to looking at videos on different platforms in terms of personal traits and what kind of things you would like to measure. So personal traits will be here is so-called polychronicity and multi-tasking motivations. And the media repertoire is not personal trait, but is something that the media behaviors they have. Is how big is the modes actually people watch the mobile, no, not mobile, the multiple multi-screen video. Okay. So first, multi-screen video viewings. In the beginning of the research, definitely you have to tell people why it is so important to study this topic. Okay, and then so here you have to show all that's the trends of multi-screen media consumption behaviors, and Nielsen data, lots of data supports that, and Scully paper also see that. So it's very important type of media consumption. And global trends, you indicate, you shows like 55% of the global media users to access the TV shows or movies through at least 3 screens, the laptops, tablets, and the smartphone. Then you have to actually, this is the tricky part. What is multi-screen video viewing? And how are you going to measure it? Because it's a quantitative survey. So to me, the definition will include 2 parts. One is the traditional couch potato passive video viewing. So you watch video, you don't want to do anything. However, multi-screen also have the active part, because in addition to watching and enjoying the films or enjoying the short videos, at the same time, on the multiple platforms, you will probably have 2 screens, and at least 2 screens, right? A second here shows second screening for videos. And that's in the time, also second screen is another important term, frequently appear, in different market reports or some also in the journal articles. So second screen is the concept that people use the primary and secondary 2 screens to watch video and engaging in video related activities, such as information seeking. If you are particularly interested in the leading role of the, a very handsome, like a K-pop, right? The leading role, you don't know who he is, and then you like to Google some of the background and the past, what he has been done, or you would like to know more about the historical background that you are not familiar with, so that's the information seeking. Or you will be very interested in some clothes or some cars that some of the actors in the movies had actually used. So you can also check and will maybe have some tarot marketing. So information seeking is one. And the other is maybe you will use the apps to find out some of the background information, or you will have the social media discussion with others. Yeah, maybe in terms of the plot and why suddenly this role being so loved by everyone just dropped that. Will it be fair? Okay, like Walking Dead, when at the time I saw that's the only Asian guy. He played a guy, I think, from Korean or Japan. He played a Japanese guy, but he's from Korean. And then he's the only Asian face. And he was surrounded by all the workers, the dead bodies, and then try to eat him and then the other person with him. And he just fell down of the treasure bin. And all the surrounding is at the end of that season. And he was, I think nobody can survive at the time. Okay. And magically, he survived. I don't know how, but the reason is that on Twitter, and people feel so sympathetic about the guy because he has a very gorgeous wife. Also, they run escaping different directions, and the wife has been just realizing he got pregnant, and they are a lovely couple. And so lots of people just cry and said, please don't kill him and this and that. So following that trends that, producers or the scriptwriter definitely will think, oh, maybe we should let the guy sustain at least one season. Sadly, he came back and he also dropped that by other, different scenarios. And then, yeah. So what I'm saying is that this is the active part. I don't know. So did I mention about there are different ways to measure rating, right? In the past, we only have the Nielsen rating as a passive viewing, but Nielsen also have the social, meaning they monitoring Twitter and lots of Twitter activities, and then in terms of the numbers, and then there are different ways to calculate the importance of the Twitter activities of specific shows. So here, indicating the importance of the social activities of the second screen. So I don't think we only measure the passive will be enough to actually reflect the current multi-screen viewing behaviors. So there will be two parts, passive part, active part. And in the introduction, you also have to identify, so what's the research gap? Okay, I remember the Lauren and the Esther, your group did identify, say, oh, this is the gap, I'm going to do this. That's a good practice. So don't forget, for your research, what kind of things you can achieve that none of others have been done before. You got to identify, no matter you contribute to a theoretical concept or some practical findings or whatsoever. Okay, so here, like I said, in the past, the research did not consider consumers' media palette in selecting the cross-platform media content across different, platforms. Okay, so basically, people choose actively to combine the different methods that they want to consume the videos, and it's based on their personal preferences. So this can be reflected in the repertoire concept. How many ways or modes they watch videos. Okay, and then multitasking, we always mention about multitasking because we are so busy, we have so many devices. When we're talking about multiple devices, people may use each screen for different purposes, right? So multi-screen, multitasking will be important, but none of them actually associate this concept to the second screen or multi-screen video viewing. So that's another gap. So finally, in the past, at least before this article, I did not really see, I see just very little about what other predictors for such multi-screen video consumption. Okay. So identify three key variables in the studies, like polychronicity. Have you encountered this concept before? Poly means multiple, a lot, here different ways. Chronic means time. So this is a personal trait. People feel like they are better off, doing things when they do multiple things together at one time. So the other one, it will be monochronicity. Okay, so this is a personal trait. So in terms of media motivation, multitasking motivation, I have, in the past literature review, they identify 5 different kinds of motivations. Later on, you can see, even including addiction. Okay, media repertoires refers to the concept that you choose and pick different ways to do certain media activities. So here is the multi-screen video viewings. So maybe you will use it like IPTV, you will use OTT. So you listed multiple ways for people to choose. But the concept, you are not really just looking at the individual way for them to consume the multi-screen videos, but you would like to know how big is the size, how many ways actually they use to achieve their media consumption habits. Okay, dependent variables, I told you that passive screening viewing is how long is the time span. An active second screen device, is a second screen viewing behaviors will divide into smartphone, tablet, laptop, desktop, which is computer, okay? 3 different kinds, and for the video related activities. So not looking at time span, but the frequency. when you design a survey questionnaire, maybe you can think about is the frequency per day, frequency per month, or weekly. It depends on how often you think people use the specific media that you want to examine. So first, always start with the definitions. You may see the words like the concept polychronicity across different studies. They all have their definition. Some follow maybe A, some follow B, and they'll always have origin one. But you pick the one, the definition fit your own perception and your purposes of the research most, and choose that. And the other way to do this would be you have to do the measurements, right? In a survey, you have to measure. And whoever's measures that you adopt or adapt will be the most important ones. So it could be related to what kind of instruments that you use. And you may, there's nothing to argue, because if they measure something reflecting on the questions they want to testing the concept, of course, if you feel that the set of the questions most likely to fit your purposes, the definition will be closer to what you want, right? Okay, so basically here it said, okay, people prefer to be engaged in 2 or more tasks or events simultaneously and actually engage in certain activity, or they believe their preference as the best way to do things, preference to do multiple things at the same time as the best way to do things. Okay, so the other concept, remember last time when Lauren and Esther, you proposed to do something that you did not have enough time to propose the measurements, right? So if you want to do survey, then you have to definition and then past studies, how they actually support. You may have a very fancy and complex models. However, it's not based on our imagination or in our heart, we feel like they can fit or they are related. The difficult part is how to make the logic justifications that A is associated with B, or A positive predicts B, or negative predicts B. You need to base on the past studies. You cannot jump from nowhere and just say, oh, I feel like they have the relationship. I feel like they should be positive or negative influence. No, the quantitative part, just have to be very clear. So for instance, okay, here, because I saw the claim that in the past, nobody actually using a scholarly examination or investigation of the multi-screen video, right? So I couldn't actually find anything related to that to justify the relationship. So I have to look in for something similar or second near, what I want to examine. So here, for instance, just looking at this is a TV concept, right? TV program. Or you can say, okay, compare with the monochrons. Polychrons means people who feel like they are they have the polychronicity characteristics. Okay, would like to watch more than one TV program at a time, do channel surfing or get involved in the secondary activities like other things, while the TV is on. So that's something on TV. Okay, so you use it. I did not take all the literature review here, but when you present, you will need to have a clear linkage. Okay, based on the most important, past studies, I can say, okay, hypothesize is positive associated. Okay, and then it here also said polychronic tendency was found to be positive associated with the media multitasking among internet users. So here has internet users, and also the last one has the TV program. Okay, at least it covers some new media and the video media. Okay, so you can say, okay, so polychronicity is hypothesized to be positive associated with the passive and active ways of video multi-video viewings. And then based on the past studies that Porty and the colleagues said the young customers, they usually multitask with media for 5 different purposes. Okay, here has, okay, greater control or efficiency, hedonic experiences, or connecting with friends, which is a socialization, 4 different purposes. And then so adopt the other paper, because when you adopt, you have to mention it. Otherwise, you cannot just jump to the master part and say, oh, I use, you know, Kononova and the John's paper, and using the 5 different dimensions, but you did not mention it in the review. So nobody knows why. Since that's so important that you want to use it, and tell me why. So here has the 5 dimensions, different from the 4 that we just explained. So you also have to define, okay, control, why control? Perceived control always being an important aspect that people feel like they can use, like smartphone, or use aim health, or different kind of things, or even the recently I just presented recorded version for ICA is the location-based mobile advertising. They feel like they can control app-based, so they send the consent and say, I'm going to receive the ads, I'm going to install the app. So when you send me the advertising based on my location data, then it's okay. Better than you just push it to me. It's like a spam, okay? So connection, similar to the previous literature that we talk about the connection context with the family and friends. So it could be connection, it could be a social, it depends on here that it's a connection purposes. Okay, efficiency has been mentioned. Or hedonism is something more for entertainment, pleasure, okay? And finally, I think it's important to also add something like addiction. Addiction is interesting because binge watching, right? At least right now, we watch lots of OTT like Netflix, like Mimi studied. We couldn't help because they give us like a season. That's the purpose we want to watch them, right? So addiction will be something also important to add. So that I choose the 5 to be the instrument. Yeah. So also assume that they will be positive associated with the video consumption. Or finally, looking at the media repertoire. Because if you have different ways to watch videos, perhaps the bigger size of the way or the modes will help you, and then you will increase this consumption. So here also have the definition, like a media repertoire is defined of the collection of the video sources that individual regularly use. Okay, so it's a cross-platform environment, so media repertoire is very important, but none of the others actually looking at the context. So you just have keep saying, okay, so why is actually appropriate to looking at the multi-screen video in this aspect? And also justifying, okay, based on the past studies, then supposedly we hypothesize that media repertoire is also positively associated with the 2 different kinds of multi-screen video consumption. Okay, it's a Singapore National Web Survey. Could you tell me, you know, they are usually survey, probably you will use paper and pencil, right? You could do online survey. And even later, people may do phone survey and also mobile phone survey. Right. So what's your preferences? I mean, what are the differences that when you use the different approaches? So last time maybe we can ask you know, the team, you propose, even later on you change to quantitative way. So at that time, what kind of method you will use to do survey? Online survey. Okay, online survey. So because online survey, you are going to recruit young people, right? Remember? And then young people who have, did you actually set the criteria they have prior experiences on using Clubhouse? No. Yes. Okay. Okay, personally, I would suggest, because when you imagine something, and based on in the perception or everything is perception, yeah. But if you don't have any experience before, it's imagination. So based on imaginations, the answers cannot be really valid and legitimate. So to me, all my so-called new media behavior study, the user study, I always ask them to be the user. So you will have the screening questions and then ask them for here. At least they have the 3 screens that fulfill the multi-screen owner definition. And they have to have the second screen video viewing behaviors or experiences because everyone passive watch. Okay, so there's no need to actually knowing that, but at least you know, okay, they have some social engagements and they have some information seeking, they're responding to certain, programs, maybe have the hashtag or whatever. They have to have this experience to be qualified as the respondents. So you will have the filtering question in the beginning to screening out those people who are simply just young people. Okay. So I also use more web survey, but the reason is that the data is clean. I think data cleaner. It's easily actually to notify there are some abnormal activities like people you will filter out doing the data cleaning. Is like some people just always have neutral, or there has a very fixed patterns that quickly finish all the questionnaires question, or they will have unreasonable short time finish the questionnaire without even thinking. So there are ways to delete the so-called not legitimate questionnaires and filter out. Just keep the good data. Okay, and here you see data collection. I would say age and gender fit the Singapore's 2015 social media user profile. You can select other criteria like a profile, but here I use the social media because to me I think TV may not be the more important, but social media they can have the interaction, and the second screen I think definitely need to have the social media user profile, and so they reflecting the real person in the society. So it can be claimed as at least it's a representative to the social media users in Singapore. Okay, so after data cleaning, and you will have certain numbers that you have to report that, and what kind of data analysis, like is a regression. Okay, so quantitative, you always have to indicate, who actually is in your profile, your data. So because it fit the gender and the racial and age, so actually racial also. So you need to monitor percentage of people. So you may feel very strange why Chinese people overwhelmingly large, but that reflects Singapore's societal composition of the people. Okay, and also educational attainments. They also have more college and undergraduates. Okay, and monthly incomes we can measure based on Taiwan's or the place that you want to measure. They will have categories, but here is in Sing data. In Taiwanese data, there will be too ridiculous. Okay, Sing data perhaps 1 to 20 at a time or 22. I don't know how much is comparable to Germany and the French, but yeah. So in US, hard to calculate, but it's a huge number. Like, okay, 1,000 will be 20K in Taiwan. So there will be divide 3 and plus 2. There will be how much in US dollars? I will ask Andrew to help. If that's 1,000 Sing dollar, how much is the US dollar at this moment?
750.
Okay, 715. Okay, 750. Okay, so that's the concept. And then that's interesting. I noticed some of my colleagues when they measure the income, they don't measure with the salaries. They measure with the HDB, which is the government supported housing, 国宅, you know. So meaning they actually, I think they would like every Singaporean can afford to have their own living. So people, especially young people, when they plan to get married, they will just have their HDB, and their family can have the lease of the 99 years of the HDB, but without owning the land. So it's a national policy. So they will define into it's a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, executive or suite or whatever. And you can see, oh, that's a private condo. They totally representing the different richness or your economic situation. Okay. So in terms of regression and 3 layers, right? The first block is looking at the, you know, whether it, okay, looking at the Chinese or non-Chinese, because other ethical groups will be too small. So only looking at Chinese and non-Chinese. Okay, and then polychronicity and media multitasking motivation, and here it has the media repertoire will be important to looking at, but media repertoire are put in the last to looking at the inference. So here you can see, okay, passive has 1, okay, active has 3 different types of devices, and where they see a regression actually has, usually will have 20 something to actually indicate that's a better model fit. So, all right, so ethically, if the Chinese people, they're significantly related to the passive video viewings, okay, and the age has no significance in the passive, but polychronicities also have age differences. So we hypothesize the younger people tend to be more polychronic. Okay, and then unfortunately, there is no actually the multitasking motivation has been found significant. Okay, so you need to explain why, because it seems very intuitively they should be related. Okay, and repertoire cross out, and then polychronicities, they're all significant influencing the 2 different types of video assumptions. Okay, so then you can look in an individual device and then the inferences, like age, if really negative related to smartphone. Okay, and desktop. But gender means male is 1, female is 2, is 0. So basically positive means related more to male. Okay, so male tend to use the tablet to do the second screen video viewing compared with female. Okay, so you can see some interesting analysis. Okay, so hypothesis you were testing, so 1A, 1B has been supported because chronicity has been positive associated with the 2 different kinds of video consumption across the platforms. Yet the multitasking motivation not found significant. Media repertoire is found as the most influential predictors, and then also associated with the 2 kinds. Okay, but in terms of the second screen, then basically more active are using smartphone than tablet, and also the desktop. Okay, so it's supported. Then looking at the, we have looked at the demographic. So here's results. Certainly you can look in at the second layer and the first layer and to do some comparisons, right? And then because when we add the media repertoire, then media multitasking motivation become non-significant. So you can go back and then see, oh, what if I remove that very significant inference over the repertoire? Maybe I can see some differences just looking at the polychronicity and the multitasking motivation. So here you will see a little bit significant here, right? So in terms of the smartphone active viewings, then people will have the significant, even though it's still a little bit weak in terms of connection. And here with laptop and desktop, the computer use related to entertainment. Okay. So the justification is that larger repertoires that people will actually influences people a lot in terms of they spend more time on the passive viewings and more frequently using the second screen. So you have to discuss why something is significant and salient, similar to the past study, and why something is not significant or even opposite to your hypothesis. So no matter the discussion parts, the first, the salient parts echo your assumptions, or the negative, sort of overthrow what you have assumed. And also can looking at the past studies or some of the theoretical theories that you want to examine and then see, whether you have some extension in terms of the results. Okay, and don't forget, you will always have the limitation contributions. So contribution will be a method contribution that's rare, but if you use a very fancy and big data or different kinds of ways or multiple ways to measure, it probably will be your contribution. But don't forget, always have to say, theoretically, I contribute to this, and then practically, I contribute to shed light to maybe the marketers, shed light to the video industry players, or whatever. Okay. Okay, so in the end, I also justify media repertoire may be influencing. There's no associations with the media, multitasking media motivations. Yet, polychronicity may mediate the relationship between the motivations and the video consumptions. But that is for the future studies. So future study could be something included in your conclusion and discussions. Okay. So far, do you have any question? How about Lucas and Melissa? So this is the list, because when you start to work on some papers, some medias, you will have a line of studies. And the one, if you have a good questionnaires, it cannot just only have one study. It will have multiple papers being produced. So sometimes people, my students, they also have the misperceptions that, so my thesis will be as clean, as thin, something looking like a journal article. No. Okay. The thesis actually should reflect all the data that you have collected. So it could be mixed method, and it could be multiple ways to analyzing your data. Then part of it will become one paper and two paper if you have a good design. But you don't repeat yourself. Everything just well designed, and you can lead to a very clean purpose to what you are going to produce. Like Fabi at least have two paper, but the first one has been produced, presented in the conference and also journal articles. But the second one, conference, but I haven't had time to help to work on the journal article yet. And yeah, similar to Jeffrey's paper, the thesis has two paper, or he even split off into the third paper after his first year in the City University of Hong Kong, and then he still have the third paper collaborated, scores with me, with different approach looking at the data. So you can see the 2019, this is the paper. Okay, after I returned to Taiwan, it has been presented in ITS in 2017, and so it takes time there for you to work on, and then especially I have multiple papers, sometimes I just don't have time. Yeah, so don't forget, each of your baby just have to make it being published to count as one real baby instead of just during pregnancy. Yeah. Although for students, I strongly encourage you, if like this study that you have work in the new media convergence or different kinds of classes, if possible, just turn it into a conference paper first. At least it will show good records that it's not just the school assignment. It's something you have been blind reviewed and selected by a good conference that you present and share. And based on the feedbacks from the participants, then you may have a good idea how to improve the papers and then try to find a fit in the journal venue and publish it. Yeah, so that would be the whole and the full process. Okay, any question? I don't want to keep talking just by myself, so I now have to ask you a question. So what factors you think if to improve? Okay, so first of all, looking at the so-called multi-screen video viewing, do you think the two dimensions, the passive and the active second screen usage will be good enough? Or you have other ways to measure it? And we always can looking at the predictors. So what actually you think also will contribute to the multi-screen video viewing? Okay, I will let you think about it, like this, because it remotely may not be able to discuss, but we have the class groups. So usually I will give you more time, but if the remote students from the distance, you don't have classmates to discuss, then we'll cut short, but you can search the informations. Perhaps you will, what time is now? Okay. Okay, so maybe we can give you the time, including the break. Okay, so we'll come back at 2:10. And you maybe tell me what you think. If it were you, this paper has been published, right? So if you want to do a similar, move forward studies, what would you like to do? Maybe can thinking about different predictors or improve the dependent variables, or thinking about different ways to do this study. Just try to think. And Google, maybe any other study can shed light to you. So when we come back, I will ask all of you to share your insight. Okay? Is that okay, Lucas and Melissa? Hi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
All right. So you totally will have 15 minutes. So we'll come back at 2:10, and your time maybe is 7:10 or 6:10. You can calculate your time. All right. So I'll talk to you later. So Miming has a question for us.
Before we talked about passive multi-screening, but I'm a bit confused. If the watcher is passive, how does he or she watch two two screens at the same time? Like in what scenarios? Because when I imagine a couch potato, I think usually he or she will just watch one screen.
So basically, the dependent variable is defined as the multi-screen video viewing. So the definition in the study is that it includes the passive and the active. Yeah. How? Because usually when, it depends on how you actually think the media behavior. So right now, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes I'm watching video at the same time I'm doing something else. It's seldom I pay full attention to the video itself. And if your study is about only viewing and passively, that is not the definition that I want to examine in this study. So in the very beginning, you have to tell people, the so-called multi-screen video consumption right now is not just cross-platform, and it actually have very complicated behaviors, including passive video viewing on the screen. At the same time, they will do information seeking, social media interaction, and different things, that are related to the video viewing at the same time.
So passive and active, like they happen at the same on the same.
It will be something like last lecture we talk about the screen behaviors, right? They have coherence, they have so something like complementary and shifting, mirroring. So we as one human being, we cannot do two things at the same time. Just like polychronicity, you want to multiple things at the same time. You still will have the time lagging or differences, but just at that period of time, you are doing the thing called multi-screen video viewings, including passive and active.
I see.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for your question. Okay. So I would like to ask Lucas or Melissa, you have any related way to sort of improve the study that we just presented?
Not to improve, but one question.
Okay.
Regarding actual in the TV show, ask the users to actually use a second screen, because here in Germany it's very popular to now read out comments live in the TV from users for this certain TV show. So they ask users for active feedback. Was this already a topic during the study? Because I don't know when it emerged, but now they constantly use it, and it's very normal to like interact with the TV show. But was it a topic during the time of the study?
So your question is that whether using the second screen or another additional screen to engage in the video viewing is a study's topic?
No, if it was already, so there's a TV show and they ask a question and then they read out the answers from the users live on Facebook comments, for example, or questions on Facebook. This is now today in 2021. This is very normal for German TV. But I think in 2015, it wasn't a topic yet. So,
okay. Because I'm sharing at that time when I conducted the study, but the concept is different. What I am measuring is the consumption instead of whether the phenomenon exists or not. It's by acknowledging that is the phenomenon actually emerging and become very popular across the globe. So I want to see what are the predictors actually influencing the media consumption behaviors. And you mentioned, later on we will go to so-called dual screen or social TV. I will also share one video to you. So it's also a video actually talking about how Twitter and TV can become a program. Like you said, the program actually engage some of the social media responses. For instance, they will have the hashtag, and then they ask people to respond to the hashtag, or some reality show, they will actually asking people to vote, become the ranking, or some people may even participating in a show while their question has been selected from the maybe social media platform. So yes, it's very common right now. But it doesn't matter whether the situation is common or not to become a research study, because currently lots of people still study social media use, and Facebook is everywhere. And then we have different platforms, right? But still, people, the so-called scholarly paper is to looking at what kind of, it's more like a go deeper and to see whether you want to examine is like a user profile, user predictors, what kind of human psychological or social factors influencing the media behaviors, or you want to examine the media content and media behaviors itself. So they always have a room that you want to focus on. And when you present that emergent technology at that time is emergent, just like what we actually clarify in the very beginning, what is new media. New media always is in relation to the time and the social system. So that's a good question that even those, but I would like to reflect, even those is not emergent now, but at that time it's emergent, and the points to exam is not whether to include a social media content in the program itself, but that study particularly looking at the user, and user have three different kinds of psychological factors, and the media factors, how they influencing on the two types of multi-screen video viewings. Do I answer your question, Lucas?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Uh, Melissa? Hi, Melissa. Are you
Yes,
still?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any question, or you're thinking about related study that you would like to do?
Just a question about the methodology they follow. Is
Uh,
this a survey online?
yes, web survey.
Mm, maybe they could have done or conduct, observation kind of things like go to observe the behavior of people when they do the multiple screen thing.
Yeah. That's also a good suggestion. Because when using the survey, they will give you some statistic significance, and then, but they also have limitation. You don't know, for instance, in terms of the media repertoire, how they use each type of media ways, media modes, or use their motivations. Each motivations now also have some significant or non-significance. But if you want to zoom in the specific, like we particularly mentioned about addiction, binge watching, then we can develop into another follow this, and we can map one step further and say, okay, maybe multitasking can reflecting into more like addiction parts, and then we're looking at the addiction and how the addiction most related to the so-called multi-screen viewings. So what I'm saying is that each step that the past studies has found, then we will think about a way to actually look deeper and then find some things that they haven't actually articulate or they haven't clarified. And good that each method contribute differently. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think online ethnographic approach will definitely, or just ethnographic interviews can help you to know more specific in terms of maybe can I also have some qualitative and just looking at the second screen instead of the passive viewing, and understand Singapore's young people, why they do second screen, and then different motivations, particularly also looking at the political participation. So there are lots of things you can do. Yeah,
Mm.
it's interesting. Yeah, very interesting research topic. Any of
Follow-up
you?
question.
Yes.
In the study, you mentioned that the public opinion on a topic is very important and has a large influence on the viewer if they see opinions online. Did you follow up with this study on social bots? Because in Germany, that's quite a relevant topic on which people talk. So the usage of bots to influence the political opinion of people. So did something like this occur in Taiwan or
Good question. Good question. Because before the class, I just finished the recording of the ICA social buzz and disinformation and political computational propaganda. That research. That paper has been accepted by ICA, but this year is also virtually, so I need to record first. Yeah, we did find lots of social bot campaigns in Taiwan, and then according to the VDM, oh yeah, that's a research actually show that Taiwan suffered from the most severe attack, the cyber attack, and also the disinformation's interference from foreign countries. So in terms of social bots, maybe in Germany, I don't know whether you are talking about domestic or international, but in Taiwan, we suffer both. Yeah. I have the expert interviews, social technical system analysis. I have 14 expert interviews from three different subsystems. They have the technologists, like they are hackers or they are the IT or ICT experts, or they develop bots. 然后 another one, sorry, I changed to Chinese. Another one will be policy makers from two sides. We have the digital minister, who is a genius and basically in the past he personally also developed lots of technologies, and then he now play as the bridge between the governments and the IT person. Okay, also interview, we have a government officers try to prevent the social bots and also disinformation. Finally, in terms of the so-called industry and markets, I interview platform operators, like Facebook, public policy managers, and also Line as a very popular and close tie platform. And during the elections and referendums, we always have the false information circulated on that platform. In Taiwan, yes, we have lots of serious influence from the social bots, especially Facebook bots and also Line bots. But these two bots are most difficult to be detected compared with Twitter bots now have some effective ways to detect, because they have different characteristics. So we still try to find ways technologically how to solve it. But at the same time, I think platform they try to, like Facebook, before the election, they delete hundreds of the fan page because they found the so-called CIB accounts, mean collective. It's like a collaborative in authentic behavior account. Means there's a group of accounts, they're working with the same agenda to send out some of the false information or something on purpose. So yeah, so we noticed that even though within Taiwan we have parties, and then they admitted they use bots to boost some online campaign or candidates' popularities, but we also realize the most threat may be coming from the international interference, especially perhaps China. And so during the elections, during the referendums, we have polarized issues. And also the homegrown, we have the fake news side. China may also help and then gave some resources like a social bus to boost some of the posts on the mission, which is the fake news side, to actually help distribute false information with your agenda. Oh, okay. It's a little bit fragmented in terms of all the description, but what I'm saying is that first, yes, Taiwan suffered from social bias campaign, and it's supported by expert interviews and document analysis. So the suffering actually created by not just the parties, political parties in Taiwan. Mostly, we also suffer from overseas threat from China and also from other countries. Like Light Group is a platform. We also discover some Malaysian firm. They can just join the Light Group without even getting the user's permission, and they just can disseminate in a close tight groups and then about some of the false information to influence their perception or opinions about certain topics. So yeah, so what I'm saying is that it's a complex environment, and then we have high risks and people still thinking about what to do, and we don't really take the regulation as the way to conquer the social bus campaign or the so-called disinformation. Even though we know, like Germany, you have the hate speech regulation, and because in Taiwan in the past we have the white terror. People still feel like government surveillance will be something, the big brother. We don't want that kind of intervention, and censorship won't be a possible way for us because it will be a backward, approach. So now I think our government conquer false information, sometimes distributed or pushed by the social bots more smartly. Yeah, they use more humorous ways to actually conquer some of the COVID-19, false information. Yeah, so I think we all learn from the experiences. We acknowledge bots are everywhere, and there are some misleading and even Taiwanese diplomats being committed suicide due to the false information posted on Weibo and picked up by our homegrown PTT, which is a BBS bulletin board system, and become virally. And then when you become sizable and virally, and then the media caught attention, and media turn it into news, and it will become an intermedia agenda setting effects, because then people feel like, oh, since the news has said that is the truth, and maybe we can discuss, maybe there are multiple facts, and maybe that is, and then finally just shape the public opinions, especially in a polarized society. Yeah, I said a lot, but did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so how about both of you talk about the previous study? Anything you think of to make it more interesting or current?
I'm thinking about the polychronicity part because it comes from the more about personality.
Mm-hmm.
Another theory is cognitive load,
Mm-hmm.
which I think might also affect the motivation. So maybe the content or the genre can be considered in the future.
Mm-hmm. Good idea. Because now we disregard the content itself and more looking at the user. So if the content put into the picture, then maybe genres will be something, and then genre may have different cognitive or affective inferences on how people view it, and then also inference that on affecting how they actually spend time or frequencies in terms of viewings. Yeah, it could be something to look at. Uh-huh.
For the content part, I got the same thinking. And I think that if the media's content is not boring or is good enough, will it affect that the users want to focus and concentrate on the
Okay.
entertainment time and will not like to multitask at the same time?
Uh-huh.
I'm not
Uh-huh.
sure about it. And I'm thinking that if the role of the media will it affect also about the multi-screening?
Okay, the first part you mentioned is more like the content appeal or content attractiveness. And in terms of attention span, it's like how much attention because there are some research actually in terms of the second screen. They also talking about the memory retention or attention, because how interesting will be related to that. Yeah. But the second question, you said media. What do you mean media? Is the media in the repertoire or media?
No, I was just thinking that if the media or the program is programming, now it's what is the role for me as I'm a user? So I use the media for entertainment, or it's just a companion for me
Mm-hmm.
when I'm doing other things, or it's
Mm-hmm.
I was just
Mm-hmm.
thinking will it be a factor that affect the multi-screening?
Okay, so I think that is the term called media engagement. It's like the level of engagement that actual influencing, maybe they choose to active or passive spending times or frequencies of the video viewings. So yeah, so you are talking about appeal and talking about engagement. I think that's why you are interested. Yeah. So media engagement I think is something very important, because nowadays we have multiple attention, could be very divided to catch our attention, right? The eye currency that we spend on each type of content or each type of the media actually is very precious. So yeah, that's good. Yeah, think about that. Can continue to do a lot of things. So then you may say, oh, this is a simple research, but simple research start first, and then you can expand into more complex. And sometimes, for the quantitative survey, you just need a very clear concept to measure, and people can follow and believe that is legitimate. Then you can thinking about something complex and using different ways to actually investigate and find the answers. Okay. All right. So now we need to, because you see, I have a lot of publications, right? But all of them may come from one survey, but with different measurements that I have divided, or may not belong to each other's, not in the same survey. Okay. So here, I'm not looking at my stream anymore, but I'm looking at not social TV anymore, but using dual screening use. Then you may ask me, why not second screen? Now is the dual screen. Why? Okay, first of all, I noticed there is some paper published like JOC or different journals. They use dual screening and argue that second screen means that you have the primary and you have the secondary. But sometimes the shifting is simultaneously, even seamlessly. You did not actually choose one as the primary or secondary. So dual screening just means two. So they prefer and justify this is a better term. And then following, I said, okay, I think this is better term. Then I choose to use dual screening. Okay. And then also follow some of their definition. So this paper, the first paper, so today what I share are all quantitative. It's not on purpose, but also have relevant qualitative. But the quantitative one happen to be the ones just more like in the line of the publications. So the first one, dual screening, but looking at the social predictors, because people argue that the one of the most important characteristics of the so-called dual screening is that you're using social media to do interaction. So since you are using social media, certainly you will go back as the so-called predictors more related to social. Okay. And so it's in Taiwan, and then Taiwanese internet users. I don't look at every Taiwanese. At least you have to use the internet. Otherwise, you cannot be part of the dual screening, right? Um, so also associate the social predictors and impact on online and offline political participation. So now in the previous study, I only looking at the media and user behavior. And now also looking at the media, emergent media behavior, and the predictors and how they influencing online offline political participation. So it's more specific, right? You cannot always like expanding and then also very vague. So you have to narrow down and more focus and find your niche. And that's also follow a lot of studies that people have working on this. And then I think, okay, that's good. And I'm going to move forward. And I'm going to looking at Taiwan and with the social predictors that people haven't looked at. And this paper has been published by Journal of Broadcast and Electronic Media, which is a very established journal. And SSCI, cited be the Chinese Communication Association Best Faculty article. And the next one I haven't updated. Sorry, that is also being published by the International Journal of Communication. So it's not just accepted; it has been published. Okay. So we talk about social TV, right? Because social TV and second screening, that is something related to this topic. So when I justify, I need to use, we have to explain why still screening. So in the very beginning, we'll talk about, oh, so it's one kind of the social TV. It's a convergence of TV and the social media. And the second screening is this definition, but I'm not going to use the term because I explained to you why I looking at use the term using dual screening. So that's the introduction part. You need to clarify, right? You need to position your new technologies or new media behaviors in certain context. And so that's also similar to the previous and just talk about also that's very popular and it's a global trend. So it's important to be the topic to exam. So now I actually, I remember last time when I show you talk about the social TV system. The social TV system is more like system, but now we are using social media plus TV. So I'm going to show you one of the video. Then they have some examples about in US Twitter as the most I would say important or most used back channel for the TV interaction. So in the social TV study, uh, the author actually produced a paper. Not paper, it's a book. A book. Okay. Where is the video? A book and also being invited by Google. And so she presented her talk and showing some of the video. I just want to demonstrate a video for you to see what is so-called social TV, and you can also see that's a dual screening mechanism over there. Okay, thank you. Okay, so you can see that the examples actually just indicates, some of the concept of Twitter and here, right? Okay, some of the concept of the Twitter plus TV, but right now they also talk about how actually this phenomenon, social TV, can help with the so-called advertising and branding, and then making people become famous and noticeable. But these studies I'm going to share is not in the context of just TV viewing. It's not just the branding, but move forward to into political participation. So that's how actually we can push the different directions when you feel like that's something interesting and something you can actually move forward. So here is the definitions of the dual screening. Okay, so here explain second screening is problematic because there's no primary and secondary. So dual screening is the growing behaviors. Users have the threshold to access, consume, and then produce the digital content while connected devices. So they can do social media activities as the back channel. They can while they watch the videos. Okay. Then certainly you have to say why I'm going to do and then where. Okay, the context in Taiwan, you justify why Taiwan is the right place to do so because 70% of people owns a second device, and then they also use the smartphone to consume content while watch video. And since this is tuning to political participation, right? Political participation. So also you have to explain the situations in Taiwan. Like we are democracy, we have democracy, and the only elections of presidential elections in Chinese society, and that's a very vibrant election culture, and multiple parties. Okay, so these justify why Taiwan is a suitable research site. Okay, and some significance here will be related to your contributions, like examine the predictors of the screening in consuming the political news and videos. So in the past, when people may be doing social TV and they did not indicate a specific types of content, but here, since we are going to say the inference will be on the political participation, then certainly they need to consume political related content. So the questions that you raised in the questionnaire will be related to political news and the videos, okay? And their impacts on both online and offline political participations in the Asia context, which is Taiwan. They can provide good insights to academic and also push forward and then shed light to the practitioners in the political campaigns. Since it's a serious scholarly paper, so you have to think about the so-called model theory and then theoretical framework. And here, looking at the communication mediation model, CMM. It started from looking at news information mediated by face-to-face interpersonal discussions. And this is a so-called mediated model, right? But it's the news and mediated by face-to-face. And then it can increase the awareness of the collective problems, highlight opportunities for the political participation, and lead to engagement levels. And later on, you have to justify, okay, it's not just mediated by, the so-called media and the participatory behaviors, but also they also move to like internet media and then different kinds of media. Social media has also used the CMM. And so it's not just traditional media. So based on that, since we see when we use dual screening, it's mediated. It's not face-to-face, but it also have maybe personal discussions online, right? Social media. So that's a two layers, video plus the social media discussion. So you can justify why, and then past studies has been published and looking at the political expressions on social media, how they mediate the news consumption and the political engagement. So these are your basis. And to justify why your topic can looking at these directions, and it has been actually supported by the CMM model. And now you have to talk about why they are related. Okay, so that's a heterogeneous groups discussion, and there will be active, political active individuals. They have different opinions, and then dual screening is a mediated communication, so they can reach the geographically dispersed people because they basically not in the same place, has no strong tie, it's a weak tie, virtual groups, and when they have a similar political interest, they may be discussed with each other, and then they may also related to the content they consume. Okay, so based on the CMM, this study concentrated on examining the association of dual screening with, the key concept is bridging social capital. And do you know why it's social capital? And do you know why you think only focusing on bridging social capital? Any idea? Rona? Well, what is the term called social capital? I think now people use a lot of the social media, and then always will encounter, I think a lot of communication students will encounter social capital, this concept. Have you? Yes? So what do you think? How do you explain that concept?
I'm not really sure, but is it you have the connection with others and you get more information or resources?
Okay. Yeah, just like capital is money, right? So that's other terms called social capital or cultural capital. Means how much you earn, you own the social currency. And also because you build relationship with others. So here, social media, because there's always distance, it's not like the real person, social capital. But by communicating via the social media, we feel like we gain some capital in our relationship and form community. So since the social media and Facebook and social capital become a big term, and lots of studies examine this aspect. But none of the past study actually looking at dual screening and political participation, even just dual screening, which is a bigger term, right? Looking at the direction to examine social capital before. So this is the first. So you need to identify, okay, first you need to do lots of literature review and knew what people examine, but none of them have done this. And because dual screening is TV plus or video plus social media. So social capital definitely is very important. Then I justify I'm not going to looking at bonding, B-O-N-D, bonding social capital, but bridging social capital. Okay, so there are two types of social capital. Let me see if I put it. Okay, so here is the social capital literature. So bridging social capital actually is something that you actually have the capitals with the heterogeneous groups. We tie. Sorry, it's a little bit deep. So Lucas and Melissa, have you heard of weak tie and a strong tie?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So Lucas, can you explain what is the weak tie? What is the strong tie to Melissa? And yeah.
A weak tie is a weak connection.
Uh-huh.
A strong tie is a strong connection. So
Yeah.
that would be my explanation.
That's
Did
very
you
clear definition. Thank you. Okay.
did you understand that, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Guys, so cute. Okay. When we're looking at the social network side, starting from Facebook, I think SNS is a term. And then people were looking at, oh, that's a network connection. Okay, so that's a network, and they identify, the closeness, the strong tie means the people actually close to you have a strong relationship, like your family and people you have known as your friends of life. But the weak tie is the strangers. People maybe just belonging to the same online community. that you never see each other in reality, but you have some bonding, but the bonding is weak. And if looking at the, remember a long time ago, we talked about diffusion innovation. That's actually Avery Rogers has talked about the networks, but not in the context of social media. So that's a so-called homophilious. Just the other is heterophily, means people in the same homogeneous groups, they actually have greater bonding, but unfortunately, because they share similar views and the beliefs, or limited to certain explorations of the areas. So they cannot exchange lots of very different opinions or information and give advantages. But if you're looking at the so-called heterogeneous groups, the weak tie, they actually can bring in lots of new information for you. And now we have social media, we have internet, we have Clubhouse, we have different kinds of, even now we have the distant learning. So we exchange the ideas, like Lucas asked me about the social bots in Taiwan. And if you don't know me, then you cannot ask this question. So, but right now, so we have distance, heterogeneous group in the geographical dispersed areas, but we can share information based on maybe common interests. So that's why I justify I'm going to look in at social capital, but not two social capitals, but one social capital. It's different from last time. Remember, Mimi said there are two different ways to do evaluations, right? You're in the center that divide into two dimensions of so-called review system. But I would suggest you examine both, unless you can justify, like here, I'm not going to looking at the bonding relationship, which is a close tie, which is belong to friend and the families. I'm looking at the people who watch the political news, and then they will discuss while they watch the news via the social media. So it's a bridging social capital relationship. Yeah, unless you can really clearly justify why you're just looking at one dimension, and that is the only relevance or most relevant, then you can do that. Okay, so political participation will be also defined online and offline. That I don't need to explain. And they will always have a group of instruments that people say, oh, I'm going to measure so-called online and offline participations based on certain questions, like did you fill in the online petition? Did you do online donation? There are lots of things. Then you choose one that you feel more fit. So online political participation is positive associated with the offline. Okay, dual screening come in after that, and then said, okay, define dual screening, and said dual screening use will be positive to the two different kinds of political participation, and how you can justify that, because in the past they are other studies actually support, like second screening for news is a predictor of online political participations and offline. So based on that, you can say, okay, they're talking about second screening, and in a context that is not, it's their country, European countries, and particularly for news. And now I'm going to looking at dual screening and looking at the news, and then some current affair, maybe commentaries, different kinds of, topic, and then it's also online and offline. Then it could be justified, so that's positive association over there. Okay, so bridging social capital, we have talked about it, right? And then here said bridging social capital in the context of political participation can result from the informal discussions and social media discussions. That's found by my previous colleague. So it's in the context of social media, but not in the context of dual screening. Yet it also can be applied, right? Because that's a big component of the dual screening is to use the social media for discussion. Then you said, oh, okay. And then so I think dual screeners are likely to have a conversation with people in a geographical diffused areas and heterogeneous groups, and they can access to the perspectives on the political issues. So hypothesize as the following. bridging social capital is positive associated with the dual screening use. I remember we talk about social TV systems, also mention about sociability and social presence. In the very beginning, I positioned dual screening as a social TV, right? So that's a line of study, very consistent. Then you just move forward and put it in the more specific context and usage. So sociability is something like you will have the environments to facilitate people to engage in the social activities. And there are past studies talking about perceived sociability actually has positive predictors for the STV attitudes and intention to use, and then mediated. Here has my other study is that sociability of the study mediated by bridging capitals had an indirect positive association with program loyalty. Okay, that's my another study. Okay, so based on the past studies, I hypothesize, yeah, perceived sociability is positive associated with the bridging social capital and dual screening use. And same as the social presence. Remember what's the definition of the social presence? Okay, Laura, you not.
It's a feeling of connectedness.
Okay, it's feeling connectiveness, but it's more like a feeling you are with others, feeling togetherness virtually. So you are not co-present with another person, but you feel they are just with you. Yeah, so the definition is the experience of being psychologically present with others and the perceptual illusion of non-mediation. So you don't feel like that's internet bring you that feelings or social media interactions. You feel like they are just here. Just like I feel Lucas and Melissa are with us, right? Because we are communicating. Yeah. So you will talk about lots of past studies and also say, oh, this is a very important positive predictor with the two things you want to measure. Okay, and also I add in the media trust. Because media trust is a big issue that after Analytica, Cambridge Analytica, and we said social media, we distract social media, and then platform has some problems, and then it caused the, some of the, mislead information and even influencing the election. Yeah, after 2016, U.S. elections, they have lots of, similar lines of discussion. So I think it's important to put media trust here. So this is my model. So you can see all the lines, they are not complicated, but each of the lines that are supported. All right. Control variables put into media trust, divided into mainstream media, alternative media, and of, because you will say that's a very clear cut, right? Okay. Also online web survey and the panel data, and total sample size is 961, and you will have to report, okay, so it fits the internet users in Taiwan, the distribution of age and gender, and use the SEM model to analyze the data. And it's right after the 2016 Taiwan's presidential election. That's why you can actually measure some of the influence of the political affiliation. Okay, so if you are going to use a survey, then you have to justify how you actually, the source deriving from where, and you will have the Quanbang alpha analysis to looking at the correlation and reliability issues. And so here are important things to measure, and the control variables similar. And I would like to explain the political affiliations, just like, okay, do they support a party that our DPP is the presidential party? Presidential elections, DPP won, so that would be 1 and 0. Supported DPP or not supported DPP. Okay. This is a big blur, but after putting in the control variables, and so this is still the same, right? The same as our proposed model. but the control variables put in here, they also may cause something like online political discussion, whether they were influencing. I think the interesting findings will be related to so-called social capitals, and everything accepted except the perceived sociability, no significance in terms of, negative is the no significance associated with the dual screening use. Okay, so online participation associated with offline. Dual screening positive with the online and the offline. And bridging social capital is positive associated with dual screening use, and so is the sociability and social presence. They are associated with the bridging social capital. And finally, the perceived presence, social presence is positive associated with dual screening. So that will have a mediated analysis, and then also why I want to do an alternative reverse logic, because the reviewer asked me, will it be possible that dual screening use actually influencing the proposed variables that you mentioned? Then I do the testing and said, oh, actually it's in terms of model fit, my previous model has better explanatory power. So I would say I do that instead of the alternative. Okay. After the results, it's very important to discuss the meaning of the results in terms of the salient part similar to with the past study, or what you propose as the important part and being supported or being rejected. And it's very important because bridging social capital is the things actually the first time appearing in the dual screening and in the context of political participation. So definitely need to emphasize on that and talking about why bridging social capital, explaining why they are important and why it's related to the dual screening. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Could you please just show the results?
Sorry, can you repeat? We couldn't hear you.
Could you please show the results of the study?
Show
Please.
what?
Results of the study.
Results.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have any question associated with the results?
Nope, it's fine.
Okay, you will have the slides, don't worry. We always put the slides to the Moodle. Okay. So, okay, you're welcome. So because you have to know with the model, there's some focus. And then the first important thing is to actually explain the focus. So bridging social capital, actually, I think it's very interesting if we're looking at the model. Actually, it has mediated and also influencing not just dual screening use, and also it related to the presence and the different kinds of things. Okay, so you explain that. Okay, and then the role of the media trust, because even though it's control variables, it's also interesting to know. And here said, alternative media trust has a stronger positive association with the online participation, yet the mainstream is negative related to it. Then why? And here is the explanation. Taiwanese have relative low trust in the mainstream media news credibility. I think we all agree, right? Unless there's something big happening, like our Taiwan train crisis, and or there are some earthquake, there's something neutral. But we tend to be skeptical in terms of political news, and we have very polarized your society. So when dual screeners distrust the mass media and regard political content from alternative media as credible, then they are likely to consume the internet political content, participate in online politics. Okay. So both of them actually, the trust has no relationship with the offline political participation. So it could be even in the context of the dual screening. Yeah, but that will require further examination. Okay, so how about we have a 10 minutes break and come back? That's another study. They use actually this study share the same. It's based on the same questionnaire, but questionnaire will have different measurements and variables. And this time, I'm not looking at participation online, but civic engagement. Okay, and different motivations. All right, so let's have a 10 minutes break and come back. Hi, welcome back. So we are going to continue the last study related to dual screening use. So basically, you can tell it's definitely the convergent situation because it's a class platform and with the video viewing plus the social media use. And now shift to another directions. But in the very beginning, you still have to explain why dual screening, right? Because it's a different paper. And talking about social media influencing the participatory behaviors in politics, and there are past study actually support the findings. And you have to say, okay, I want to examine now is the motivations of using dual screening for political participation. In the past, related will be some discussions will be important, and the impact of social media, how they seek the information or discuss the public affairs will also influencing they would like to participate in protests or not, right? So based on the previous, elaboration, then you justify the research purposes. I justify, okay, is to actually looking at research gap. None of the scholarly works on the investigating the relationship of the online dual screening use and the civic engagement of attitude and behavior, especially in Asian context. So in this study, I'm not looking at offline. I just looking at online engagement, civic engagement, not political participation. Why? Because I don't have the variable. You couldn't foresee everything. Uh, yeah, so that's only one group of the measurements. It's related to online engagement. So you cannot, oh, it's an offline civic engagement. So it's not online and offline. So what you measure is what you actually can foresee in the questionnaire. You cannot do something else. That is the very strong limitations of the survey. So survey is more, you cannot go beyond. But qualitative data, you can have lots of nuances, or you find new codes or the new patterns based on your data. Okay, so the aims is to examine the motivations, the use of the dual screening in Taiwan's democratic society and impacts on users' civic engagement in social political issues. Still, you need to explain why Taiwan. Okay, so Taiwan has a very sophisticated ICT environment and ranks third of the globally internet penetration, and we have mobile social media penetration high, and the social, I think is the first actually in terms of smartphone penetration in Asia Pacific. Okay, and also have lots of dual screening usage. And why looking at the civic engagement? Then I talked about we utilize lots of different ICTs and to engage on online participation in politics. And dual screening predict Taiwanese internet users online apply the political participation. So this is based on another paper, just the paper I presented in the form of the conference paper, not journal article yet. Okay, so use of the civic technologies during the sunflower movement. I don't know whether Lucas and Melissa knew about that. Have you heard of sunflower movement in Taiwan? Hello.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. So let's ask our classmates. In 2014, I was in Singapore, but I returned to Taiwan for a conference. And there was, I think a lot of people in front of legislative yuan because they worry about that is one 反服贸, which is that is I don't know how to call that act, but people worry the quick pass of the act actually will jeopardize Taiwanese people's welfare in terms of commercials and their work, because it will favor China's invention or interference. Yeah, I will let them to explain more. So you can see that young people actually they conquer the legislative yuan over 40 days. Yeah, 40 days or 30 something days. They were in the government's legislative yuan, which is uh, a building, and then they block and not allow the officers to come in. And outside of the legislative yuan, there are people crowd also. They obey all the rules. Even they do the cleaning, and then they separate recycle garbage, and then people being very orderly outside to support them. And lots of schools they stop their class, and the teacher or the instructors bring the students to the side and to talk about what is the civic participation or movements. That's actually what I observed. I was still in Singapore, but I went there and observed one afternoon. Everyone tried to, take turn to go on stage and to talk about their thoughts in terms of why students will have to stand up for their future, because they worry if the act has been passed within the seconds, and there could be a huge change in terms of the Taiwan's future will be more dominated by China. Okay, and the ruling party then was not DPP, was the KMT party. Okay, anything you want to add? Any of you? How old are you then? How old were you? Junior high school student. Well, Sam? High school, senior high school. Yeah, so they are still teenagers. So, so you agree? Can you add in? You think Taiwan has very strong civic participatory culture
With this event, yes.
with the event, and after that,
Like some of the people on the picture, they go into policies.
yeah, Lin
Yeah.
Feifan, the one raised the hand, now
Yeah.
become secretary of the DPP, 秘书长, right? Yeah, yeah.
And I remember at the time, like in my class, like a lot of our classmates, we would discuss about this event together. Like we didn't go there because we were really little, but we were still paying attention to.
So what you discuss about?
I don't remember. I remember the scene. Like I was there and my classmates were with me. Like I remember the picture, but I don't really remember all of the details.
Okay, how about you too? Or after the movement, did you notice any changes, and why Taiwan is a suitable sign for study the civic engagement? They feel puzzled. Okay.
I think I just feel like it always is, but it's difficult to explain about because I'm always here. I feel that there's
You
always
sort of, okay, it's the air you breathe, and then you don't feel any difference, but outside the place actually they found the differences. Okay, let me I think a couple weeks ago we have the one of the most popular podcast host called Lu Yizhen, and she also opened the daily morning news, talking about international news and the situation. And she mentioned it's just like the water. When we were in the water, Taiwan has the democracy, and we are allowed to discuss all kinds of issues. And why this podcast become number one in Taiwan, in Malaysia, in Macau, in Hong Kong, the Chinese speaking society, because the rest of, lots of people just open mind and talk to them. And they share like a Myanmar now has the protests and lots of bloodshed situation. And so there was one Chinese ethnic and Myanmar people. And then I don't know, is he or she, but when he connected and then opened the mic and talked to Lu during the morning, and they heard lots of the sound, the noise, like something hitting the iron in the background, and said, "What happened? Is that construction ongoing or whatever?" And he explained that is the citizens, people, they hit their maybe some parts of the balcony and with their pots, the iron things to demonstrate their disagreement to the military, military brutalities behaviors. So that's very quite sad and very and also there are some Korean, no, not Korean, Hong Kong people also talking about the situation right now in Hong Kong. They're very afraid of their future and lots of migrations to other countries. And about the Xinjiang cotton issues, they also have the Xinjiang young female living overseas and then connected and talk to Lu and talk about her father was actually being also mistreated for a long time, not just working in the farm, but other things that the Communist Party forced them to do. So there are lots of sad story, and for those people in other Chinese societies, they feel that's so precious that in Taiwan we have the so-called democratic water that we can speak freely, voice out whatever issues that we feel concerned. And that's why they rank number one, even not in Taiwan, in Hong Kong, in Macau, in different places, Malaysia. Yeah, they just listen to the content. And then, so also we have the open data culture, meaning the government release the data and then the civil engineers, they will spend their free time and to looking at the data and try to develop some of the data innovations, something like they want to prevent so-called government officers corruption. They will just take out all the annual incomes and try to from the paper Excel sheets into the Excel sheets and to looking at the incomes and see whether there's some illegal patterns. That was in the very beginning, and that was like a 八仙乐园, which is yeah, it's a tragic. It's a amusement park, and during the concert, and because they spread out the beautiful rainbow powders, and suddenly someone lit the cigarettes, and hundreds of people get injured because of the burn. And hundreds of people suddenly we need to send it to different hospitals in Taiwan. And nobody expected this kind of tragedy happening. So that's a civic engineering and using the Taipei city's open data. They quickly develop different kinds of app or websites for people try to locate their injured, maybe friends or relatives in different hospitals. I was outside, I was still in Singapore. I feel so fascinated about what could be, it's like a motivated initiative taken by the citizens out of their free will and the no pay to do such good demeanors. I really feel very appreciated. And I wrote some of the columns in Singapore. And then the leading group is called G01V, 就是临时政府 G zero V. But 临时政府, the term, in Chinese means that no government is a anarchy. Andrew, it's no government means they protest government, but they are not meaning that. It's like, while there's no government, we still need to do something good and right. But because of the term, the column I wrote for 联合早报, the largest Chinese newspapers in Singapore, and they took out the name. They sort of just sensitizing, my article without telling me. And then when I wrote about sunflower movement, and I particularly just looking at technology aspect, because when the young people, they conquer the legislation, they use the iPad to have live broadcasting, tell the whole world, we did not do anything wrong, or we did not damage, facility inside. There was so much like a smear, and then, it will try to sort of give the bad names to people. So they try to monitor the situation. They have different languages translation of what's happening, and then also send a story to CNN report to show people why they did this and what they have done. I was I was so amazed about what they have. They have, they have the courage and they have done something, and they have the news actually in Taiwan with the split view and try to say framing, differently. So that's a very complex situation. So when I actually write, I think objective column in terms of how Taiwanese young people using the new technologies to achieve their civic purposes. And I did not know that, in the newsroom of Singapore, they have a huge debate in terms of my neutral piece of the column. And finally, the editor called me and said, "Oh, our political beats actually discussed your column and then for hours." I said, "Why?" And they said, "You must have some political agenda. Which part you support young people or not support young people? Why you did not review that?" And I said, that is not the main point of my article. And I did not need to tell, oh, I'm pro blue or pro green, which is the parties. And I still can say that, right? I still say, oh, great. That's a very good use of the civic technologies. Yeah, especially initiated by the young generation with no resources but worry about Taiwan's future. Yeah. Eventually they publish it, but I don't know, that's lots of behind story. That also shows that in different contexts, like in Singapore, if I read the news and I found it quite unbelievable that, 联合早报, which is the Chinese language newspaper, but the major, I would say the target audiences is the China's people, because they did not have the open discussion. So I feel like 联合早报 is neutral. So they would rather to read the newspaper overseas instead believe their own newspapers. So that they are the major audience. So because of their major audience is not Taiwanese, it's mainland China's people. So when they framing the whole situation, they also, Singapore tend to more believe in social stability. Yeah, so they try to frame it as a violence behaviors, not encourage this kind of movement. Yet, comparatively, I looking at the Straits Times, which is an English newspaper. They sort of frame it as a freedom. It's like civil. It's more toward what actually we perceive. So what I'm saying is that, yeah, I do see, and from outside and coming back to Taiwan, civic engagement is definitely framing. I mean, it's positioned Taiwan as a different society, especially in Chinese-speaking society. Yeah. Okay. So it justifies why I want to do this variable. Okay. So explaining the context and then how engagement has been important and deal screening being defined. So these I will quickly run through because you can always read. Okay. Again, since it's from the same concept, CMM can also be used to justify not just the dual screening and the political online offline participation, and also to the civic engagement, right? It's mediated. It has the discussions. It has the media consumptions and shaping humans' behavior after the consumption. And here I plot in another theory because I want to looking at the motivations. So use and gratifications, exam, no matter it's traditional media or new media, and how people actually being motivated to consume the media, right? And get some sort of gratifications. Okay. So they are past studies talking about dual screenings gratifications much better than single screen usage. And what kind of motivation has been identified? And here explaining what is the civic engagement definition, and also how actually has been examined in the past studies. It's an indication of the governance. Okay. Oh. Okay, we talk a lot about movements, and so I will let you read at your time. Okay, so here has also some like called V Taiwan's platform that the ordinary people like young people or me, whoever have any ideas, we can post it on the platform and people can discuss about that. So one of the important topic has been discussed is Uber, whether Uber at that time should be legalized or they should be banned because that's a foreign businesses. Okay, there are other issues like same-sex marriage in Taiwan has been discussed virally, and they have different groups of pro and con. And the pro usually will be LGBT or LGBT friendly community, and con will always come in, not always, often, sorry, well supported by maybe religious groups or concerned parents. And we went through the 2018 referendum, the LGBT group being failed. So they did not really want the referendum, so couldn't have the specialized law for their marriage, but it cannot change the civic code. And then they develop into a specific just for LGBT marriage regulation. Okay. So here, just give the background and telling why Taiwan and how's the situation. Because this paper I presented the first time at QUT, Queensland University of Taiwan. It's a longer presentation, and particularly it's very interesting. It's talking about I forgot the first title of that symposium, but it mainly talking about China. And only two presenters are not from China. One is me, and the other one is from Korea. Okay, talking about Korea, but from Australia. So I think it's a good occasion that I have to advocate by Taiwan's situation in the communities that seem more toward pro-China. So I put lots of context here. Yeah. Yeah, but it's during my 20 or 30 minutes, right? I have the right to talk about Taiwan. All right, so this model is also simple, but the meaning is not simple model, but how actually they are relevant and then how they actually influence, right? So like civic engagement, it has the attitude and behaviors. Attitude doesn't mean behaviors. So this have been separated. And also this has been justified in the literature why I want to examine the two types. One is information seeking, the other one is discussion. Because still screening, the video viewing actually is not actually, I think, the most important part. But after the viewing, whether they get some information or they furthermore to elaborate or discuss about what they see. Okay, so the long literature review always embedded with the justification why you think A is related to B, or positive or negative. So here, based on the past studies, you one step and another to move forward from here, like, okay, still screening, still screeners actually how to actually doing the information seeking and how to actually fulfill their goals of civic engagements. I don't want to read page by page because we don't have time, but here just you need, if you read the paper that I have given to you or the slides, then you can tell that's a very logical flow from the papers that you have to support that discussion motivation is positive associated with the dual screening use in the context of civic engagement. Even though that's just one sentence, it spent a lot of effort to looking at the literature in the past and find a connection, and then sometimes it has no significance in certain paper and sometimes it has negative in terms of positive. But for your paper, if you have room, you can tell they are mixed findings, yet there are some related to your proposed hypothesis. Then you have to emphasize that. Yeah. Okay. So here also talk about civic engagement has been divided into attitude and the behavior. And I have mentioned whatever being adopted or adapted as your measurement, you have to put it into the focus and then elaborate that. They'll be related to how you measure the concept. Okay. That's a long literature review, but you can see more details. And I did mention that civic engagement attitude is within humans, yet civic engagement behaviors, that could be online and offline. But in these studies, it's about offline. When we conduct the research, I would like to raise attention that we don't overclaim. We cannot say we didn't measure this and then we say we measure and then put it into online and offline. No, because you only measure offline, right? And then during the break, we have discussion about your proposal. Then if you are doing qualitative, I think you should even more targeted in terms of what you are examining and who are the social groups or the age groups or whoever you examine, because that should have a specific targeted characteristics. Then you will have more meaningful results. Okay, data collection, since it's the same data set and most of the descriptive will be the same. However, the valid respondents is not the same because you may clean in some data and in some questions. It's very interesting. While I've been the examiners of one of the doctoral students in week in week, and he said, okay, they are maybe 20 or 30 questions. They said, oh, the valid numbers of the respondents. The first question is maybe 300. Second question is 200, and each question has different valid respondents. Please don't do that, okay? Because that will be only one number being valid. You have to take everything into account, and with the, I would say, smallest number, because the rest cannot be adopted. Only all the question has been answered, and all with the valid responses, and that is the number you can use. Okay, so here maybe said 1,045 qualified respondents based on the filtering criteria you said, as earlier I mentioned, right? They have to be the dual screening users, and they have to have on certain devices, and so on and so forth. And then cleaning the data only have 741. Also use SEM and to do the measurements. So you explaining, you do some measurements, and there's a factor loading and testing and whatever. So you justify, so the measurements from being defined, and then the measurement adopted from which study, and each of them has been introduced and also being explained. Okay, and even the control variable. Okay, so I think it's important to talk about, sometimes we, like the previous one, I don't really talk much about the descriptive. But this one, I think it's interesting because civic engagement is something I think I would like to introduce more. And the simple models need more details actually to translate it. So we say, okay, the respondents spend weekly like a 7 point something hours on dual screening activities. And why is dual screening activity here? Is watching the current affairs video and the social discussions. But they spend 4.6 hours on using that. It's two different things, right? It's one is dual screening activities. The other one is particularly just for political affairs and political information and discussions. But offline interaction is less. So you give the context that people understand what's happening in Taiwan more. And based on the good model fit, so this model has been established with strong explanatory power. But information seeking motivation actually has no significance to the dual screening use. I think it's good because you don't, you just talk from the data and the results. You don't expect everything will be supported or rejected, right? And also older people that engage less. And some other things interesting you can mention. Okay, I would like to talk more about discussions like online shaping offline. That's something like a dual screening is an online behaviors, how they shape the offline engagement behaviors. Okay, and then the two needs. The dual screening in past, they said information seeking, discussions, both needs actually are important, supposedly proposed. But in this study, only discussion motivation is positive associated with the dual screening use, not information seeking. Why? Then the possible explanation here is the community-based civic engagement. They may not need a lot of so-called information because we have saturated in the media and informations, and but it requires something if that's important or they want to form the beliefs and the values for that community they need to discuss. So discussions can be justified with why this is the key predictors that within the communities that they would like to actually uh, have to form their attitudes in civic engagement or behaviors of life. Okay, but in terms of attitude, that dual screening is actually related, and older respondents tend to use the dual screening related to current affair and social media discussion more. Why? And later on, I have one interesting analysis and talking about age differences. Okay, is this the last paper? Okay, I I did not have that page, but I remember I divide into three categories. Because I think my mom generations, they were totally um, they are very obedient. They are political apathetic. They feel like participating in civic movements or affairs is unthinkable. We better be reserved, in terms of what we feel. So that's more like a traditional KMT education in the early, I don't know, 40s, 50s, and yeah. And in my age, there will be a second generations that we started to have, we lifted the martial arts martial law. And then we start to talking about media liberalization and away from censorship. And we overthrew, it's like we come through, it's a more getting more democratic, and then we have the freedom of the speech. But after the sunflower, I think that's another group, and you are not just enjoying the media freedom, but you can actually carry out what you believe of life and to participate in civic media, civic technologies, or of life protests and mobilization. So I put it into three categories and then to examine, and that's why I can tell the older generations and the younger generations how they differ. Okay, so here's that older generation tend to use related to just video viewings because they would prefer to watch instead of discuss or talk. But the younger generations, the younger respondents, they have higher civic engagement behaviors. So they are not, there are some literature before talking about whether young people are being disengaged or more engaged. But in Taiwan, they are more engaged. They are totally more participated in human rights, civic technologies, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I did not include that page here. I think it's in the journal article, but not in the conference form because I found something interesting. So usually you will further develop in your final publication. Okay. So I think the last paper wrap up the topic dual screening. So from I think social TV systems, we're looking at the sociability, social presence, and different variables, and looking at the different modes of communication, and even user-generated videos. And then we're looking at today's topic, starting from social TV, social capitals, and dual screenings, and the online offline political participation, and now civic engagements. You know that technology itself it's not just looking at the media consumption or predictors from the users and how that influences their perceptions or behaviors, but you can move forward to like you said, specific genres or engagement levels. Or here I have pushed it not to advertising but to political situations or engagement. But from all the design in the beginning to the end, what you measure need to make sense. Like if you are looking at political participation, you cannot say I watch all videos. No, you only watch news or current affairs or political related commentaries. So from the surveys, I think the design comes first, and then they have to be very carefully thought out, and then you can actually have a good outcome. No matter the data, eventually when you have the respondents will support or not support. But in the very beginning, your questionnaire need to be good design. In good design, then you will have the design garbage in, garbage out. I think that's particularly true for the quantitative research. Yeah. Okay. So we still have 5 minutes. Today I actually will give out your proposal marks. Okay, and then for the two groups, actually, they revised and then submitted a revised version before time. They all have added some bonus points. I think it's the starting point. And this class, you can use any kind of method. So it's not just quantitative or qualitative. And I encourage you to do mixed method, but to be realistic for this semester, if you only have one person, I think you should focusing on what you can do best to answer your questions. Even two people, I think still not really have a long time and yeah. So you can have very good design and solid interview questions or any questions or design with smaller number of respondents. But later you can spend if you want to develop further for your conference participation or publications. Yeah. So I'm very encouraging you to have a good method. Yeah. And then you start to collect the right person or right data to analyze the topic that you propose to investigate. Okay? All right. So, hi, Lucas and Melissa. You have any question for the class?
No question from my side.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for submission your revised version, and I will test you later about your marks. And certainly you can make time for discussion if you want. Hi, Melissa. You have any question or feedback?
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you for waking up, both of you waking up so early to be with us. And next week, we will have Professor Natalie Pan from National University of Singapore, New Media and Communication Department to be with us. So basically, I will be as a participant like you, and still you will hear from me. Yeah, asking question or have feedback. Okay. So how about all of you here? You have any question? No? Okay. Do spend time thinking about your research, and then I hope you have fruitful results in the end of the semester. Yeah, and really enjoy your participation for the first half of the class. Yep. Okay, I'll be around. Okay, take good care and have a good week. Bye.